Hi everyone, welcome to DIY with Nancy. Today I'm going to share with you my recipe for Queijadas de Feijão Vermelho, red bean tarts. Now these tarts are very moist inside. It's not a cake-like consistency. It's not a spongy tart made out of beans. It's very delicious, very moist, and very easy to make. Now, if you're new to my channel, I do have a white bean tart on DIY with Nancy. Today I'm going to be using a red bean, kidney beans, that's what I'm going to be using. And they're the same, yet they taste slightly different. So delicious, and like I said, it's a very moist tart. Now, what I'll be using for the forms for these tarts are these little forms here, cupcake forms or tins, and I use it very frequently on my channel for a lot of desserts or recipes. But if you don't have these little forms or tins, you can easily use a cupcake tray. And here I have a 6 tray. You can, sometimes they come in 12, and you can use it for this recipe if you don't have the forms. So I hope you stay with me to watch how to make my Queijadas de Feijão Vermelho red bean tarts step by step. Now the first step to make the Queijadas de Feijão Vermelho red bean tarts, we're going to start off with the food processor. And I have here 1 can, which is 540 milliliters of red kidney beans, feijão vermelho. And I'm also going to add the liquid that's in the can as well, right into the food processor. Now I'm just going to process the beans in the liquid until it becomes a smooth and creamy puree. Now after 1 minute of processing in the food processor, the bean puree is ready. Just want you to take a look at that texture. It's smooth and creamy. Now I'm ready to walk over the bean puree to the stove where we're going to add the balance of the ingredients. Now for the next step, I'll be working at the stove. I have a medium-sized saucepan. I'm going to be adding all the ingredients. I'm starting off with 1 3/4 cups of sugar. To that, I'm going to add the bean puree. Make sure it's all into the saucepan. I'm just going to scrape the balance of the puree and make sure it's all in there. Next, I'm adding 1/2 cup of water into the can and just combining the liquid from the feijão that was in the can. Pour it into the saucepan. And to that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature. So 1/2 cup is about 1 stick of butter. Now you want to stir it together to combine to ensure the sugar doesn't stay at the bottom of the saucepan. Now you want to ensure that you have your stove on a low to medium heat. Now you can see that the butter is melting. I'm just going to stir it to combine and get ready to add the balance of the ingredients. Next, I'm going to add my dry ingredients. I'm going to start off with 1 1/2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Place it right into the saucepan. And to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Next, I'm going to add 2 lemon peels. Stir it together to combine all the ingredients. It's very important that you stay by the stove and constantly stir this mixture. It's a very important step to this recipe. Now I'm going to stay by the stove and consistently whisk all the ingredients in the saucepan, and it's important that you stay by the stove to do this. Remember to keep your stove on a low to medium heat. Next, I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And here I'm adding 8 egg yolks. So I'm just going to mix together the egg yolks before I add them to the saucepan. And now I'm adding 2 whole eggs. Place that into the mixture. At this point, you want to turn your heat from a low to medium heat and consistently whisk the mixture until you get a thick consistency. I've been whisking for about 10 minutes. My feijão mixture has thickened, and at this point, you can now turn off your heat. And finally, for the last ingredient, I'm adding 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Give it some flavor. And all I'm going to do is stir in the vanilla extract into the feijão mixture. Once you've stirred in the vanilla, you're going to set aside your feijão mixture and move on to preparing the tart molds for the queijadas de feijão. Now, to prepare the tart molds, I simply already started buttering the tart molds. This is what they look like. They're just simple little tart molds. Now, to coat the tart molds, I'm using about 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter at room temperature. Now, for this step, I'm just using a pastry brush to coat the tart mold with the butter, as you can see. So I have about 3 more to do. This recipe makes about 15 queijadas de feijão vermelho. Now here on my channel, I also have a recipe for queijadas de feijão branco, which I used a smaller mold, which gave me about 20 queijadas de feijão branco. For this recipe, I'm using the deeper and larger molds, which will give me about 15 queijadas de feijão vermelho. Next, I have here 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. Now, I won't be using it all, but I have about 1/2 cup here. And all I'm going to simply do is sift a generous amount of all-purpose flour into each of the forms. Now for the next step, you can see that there's extra flour in the tart mold, and all I'm simply doing is rotating the tart mold to make sure that the all-purpose flour is completely coated over the butter. And then your tart mold will just end up just like this, completely coated with butter and all-purpose flour. Now to my left, I'm placing the tart molds on a baking tray with parchment paper. For the next step, I'm ready to fill the tart molds with the feijão mixture. And I'm going to be using a scoop to place the mixture into each of the tart molds. And I'll be filling them 3/4 full. At this point, you want to ensure you preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, before I place the queijadas de feijão vermelho in the oven, I'm going to take each one and gently tap the mold on the counter to even out the mixture. The queijadas de feijão vermelho are ready to go into the oven. I'm going to bake them at 375 degrees for 55 minutes. Here are the queijadas de feijão vermelho red bean tarts that have come out of the oven. I'm going to let them set and cool for 25 minutes before I remove them from the forms. The queijadas de feijão vermelho are now cooled and easier to remove from the tart forms. So I'm going to be removing all of them by just gently tapping the tart form onto the tray, and they come out easily. And for the last step, I have some confectioner's sugar that I'm simply going to dust onto the queijadas de feijão. I'm going to leave 8 without, and I'm going to dust 7 with the icing sugar. My queijadas de feijão vermelho Red bean tarts are ready to be served, and you can see I've placed half with icing sugar and half without. They're delicious either way. Now for a close-up inside, let me break into it, show you how moist this queijada really is. And there you have it, my recipe for queijadas de feijão vermelho, red bean tarts. Simple to make, very important, the stirring over the stove. You want to make sure that you keep stirring until it thickens. That will make your queijadas perfection. And I hope you all enjoyed the recipe. It's an easy one and it's very delicious. So if you like the recipe, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Take care.